We hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom, about conventional wisdom. I am your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I am with my new friend, Esther Polson. So excited to have this conversation with her and hear about her career journey. And I know that she will have, as always, tons of gems to give us. So,
Kim,
Esther, I'm
it's a
going to
delight to be here. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so off to you.
My name is Esther Polson. I'm the founder and CEO of Rare Solutions LLC. We're based in New Jersey. We are 30 people strong in the United States and a couple international. We specialize in marketing operations, really the completely unsexy and uninteresting side of marketing, the data, finding the people, targeting, segmentation, slicing and dicing, and getting the right messages to the right people at the right time over the right channel. So we're not the pretty picture people. We're not the copy people. We just make sure it gets to where it needs to go.
The very important though, right? Because I think so much of marketing, people think the message feels good, right?
Yes.
This just feels like the exact thing that you need to hear, as
Yes.
opposed to what actually is landing where.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really important work to do. Great. Okay. We are dying to know if you could invent a new holiday, what would it be?
I think that we owe ourselves what I would call a blank slate day. Okay. And what do I mean by blank slate day? We, especially those of us who are in positions of leadership, but pretty much everybody, especially everybody who we are entrusted to work with, I think that we owe ourselves a blank slate day, and that means a day of no obligations, a day to breathe, a day to meditate, a day to be completely in our own heads. We don't do that. Even quote unquote days off that people take, it's taken up by obligations that we have to others, or we say, oh, I've got to take care of everything from food shopping to paying bills, whatever. And there isn't that space to take the time to just sit and reflect and breathe and not have the obligations. And often we start our day with a whole list of things to do. And like I said, even a day off is usually starting with a monster list of the things we didn't get to. And I think that we owe ourselves that opportunity to have that blank slate where nobody we for a day, one day, that we are not pulled into a million different directions and that we can be in us.
Oh my God, I am 100% in. I really like the way that you framed this because I think it's very different than a day off for the reasons that you just said. I think the interesting thing, I have this group coaching program, and I was saying maybe randomly just need to give everybody a day off, and like they cannot check their email. They cannot respond. They can't look at their calendars. Like work is off limits. But I think you're really onto something around even like other days off where we have a lot of other obligations. And all right, so
Everything.
okay, Esther, I am 100% in for this.
Okay.
We call it blank slate. Blank
Blank
slate day.
slate. Yep. Your day is a blank slate. You
Oh my
don't start with a
God.
list and you don't allow a list to come in. But if you
Okay.
sit on the couch and do nothing, or go to a park, or go to a beach, or go to a mall, or nothing, or just take a walk with no one. And of course, there's practicalities with that if you have young babies and other things, puppies. But maybe just take me for a walk, just take it. But just where it's not the thing, give a moment, thing, give a moment, thing. It's that. because that interrupts your headspace of looking at what it is that you need and what it is that you value.
It, yes. And I was actually just saying to my assistant literally today that I have no time to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so busy right now. I can't think. I was like, I just need to carve some time out so that I'm not just thinking about what the next thing is, but I'm thinking about that bigger picture.
There's an expression, a great expression that I learned in a business program called the tyranny of the urgent. And that's what holds us, right? The
That's right.
urgent thing comes in and it's holding us back from
Yeah.
taking care of the other things that are important.
And listener, if you are saying, Kim, you are a business coach and you are saying you have no time to work on your business, the irony has not escaped me. So
Absolutely.
I am definitely looking to create some more space and I will do it. Oh my
Right?
God. I just love that. All right, Esther.
Yeah.
So, what's one piece of conventional wisdom that you followed early on, only to realize it really was not, it didn't serve you? It was not the right advice for you.
This was something that I had been taught from another business owner when I was first coming up, and that is that you need to introduce fear to have respect. And and I really summarily reject that for a number of reasons. One is when I had the first few people working for me as a manager when I was young and stupid, and I realized that the threat or the specter of discipline or losing a job or whatever wasn't really getting me anywhere. What it was doing was it was introducing obscurity, obfuscation, and a lack of transparency. And that because people, when they work from a position of fear, they don't give you the information you need to
That's
make
right.
good decisions. And we see this even now where there's this idea that having people be afraid of you is somehow going to make them more productive. I summarily reject that. You know what creates respect? It's not fear. It's respect.
Yeah.
It's mutual respect. That's the
Shocking.
thing. Yeah, I know. And it's just, and it's amazing to me that, that here we are in 2025 and we're still talking about the idea that terrorizing people into complicity, into performance, into effectiveness, it isn't true. It's shadows. And we see this every day. We see this in mistakes that get made and hidden. And I've often told my team, there's only really one thing that I'm ever going to really fire you for, and that's for lying, because holding back information is the thing that creates bad business decisions. You need to have that, and you have to be able to have an environment where people aren't afraid to
That's right.
say the hard things, to give the bad news, to say
Right.
what has to be said. So that was such a thing in the 80s, 90s, and in the early aughts, and I'm moved way on from that. And I feel I have a valuable team because they can, and they're not afraid of me. They respect me, I respect them, and that's it. Very simple.
What that makes me think of is there's a lot of management books and a lot of lauding of leaders whose mantra is you can only do not come to me and just complain. Like
Mhm.
you have to have a solution.
Oh
And
yeah.
okay, I'm all for that. Here's the caveat though. If I'm on the line or I'm a manager and I see a problem and I don't know how to solve it,
Yeah. You still have
right?
to be able to talk about it.
That's right. You have to be able to talk about it. Now, I agree. Just coming to the table all the time and just saying, this is a problem, this is a
Yeah.
problem, this is a problem, and making it your problem,
Yeah.
not a fan of that. But I think when we make these unequivocal, you have to have a solution. And because what the reason that I thought of it and the connection here for me, if this sounds a little random, is about safety as opposed to fear. And the key word, which you said, which is really respect, right? If I come to you and I say, listen, Esther, I don't have the solution. This feels actually a little bigger than me. but here's what I'm seeing, and we need to tackle this in some way. Maybe because it hits this person's job and this person's job, maybe we need to get together. What do you think about that? But just making it so that nobody can speak up unless
No,
they know
absolutely not.
the answer.
Yeah. When I was still a young tech manager, I worked on a project, and this comes into this being able to speak truth to power, not being afraid to do. I worked on a project where the director, a couple levels up, came down and said we needed to complete a fairly complex program in 4 weeks. And I said, it can't be done. It was just like a completely splitting apart companies, and there were a lot of logistics, was not going to be able to be done in 4 weeks. And he said, it needs to be done in 4 weeks. I said, it can't be done in 4 weeks. And I'll give you 100 developers to get this done. I said, you can give me 1,000 developers. It's not going to make one bit of difference. It cannot be done. And he said, are you telling me no? I said, I'm telling you no. I said, however, I said, let's get at what the key things are so that I can get you some sort of yes. Okay. He was pretty nonplussed about it. He hung up the phone. And then my manager called me and he said, you told this person no. I said, yeah, because that's the answer. You really shouldn't say no to someone at that level. I said, I also can't lie to him either. This has put me in a little bit of a bind. And that's a story that I shared. I wrote a book called Second Banana, Success and Satisfaction Behind the Scenes. And part of it is really being able to speak truth to power. And you have to, first of all, not be afraid to do, but also as a manager and as a leader, invite that, to not have people be afraid to tell you bad, hard things so that you can get to the important yeses. That's super, super important.
I really love that. It's not no and see you later, alligator, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I say no all the time, but I say no all the time because when I say yes, the yes is gold. You can bank on it. And
Right.
that's where trust comes in with client relationships. It comes with my employee relationships. You don't sit there and give a BS answer because you're afraid to give the truth or you want to defer it. That's not helpful to anybody.
Yeah. And I love this. Why don't you talk a little bit more about this second banana idea? Because I think it's so interesting and such a juxtaposition, right? I think marketing operations are the support and they are the foundation that hold everything else up, right? And yet you lead a second banana, right? It's a really interesting idea. So talk a little bit more about that.
So the second banana, as some people may know, comes from old-timey vaudeville as the person who said the lines or set up the jokes so that the top banana, who was the star of the show, could shine. And a good top banana does need a foil or a second banana to help increase the entertainment value of what they're trying to convey and what they're trying to do. So I learned from a young age the value of kind of sitting behind the quote unquote star and helping them be amazing. Not in a pulling the strings perspective, but what is it that I can do to help them be awesome and them shine in the things that they do best and take care of the small things in the background or the prime the work as much as possible just so we can all get to success. So I wrote a book about it and I wrote lessons I learned from childhood and learning how to share hard news, hard facts, and just overall lessons learned that kind of led me to where I am today and trying to be a reasonable human and a reasonable leader when now I've had to sit in the captain's chair and conversely listen to my second bananas who really do have the interests of myself and the company at heart in
Right.
telling me hard things and sharing hard truths.
Right. Love that. Yeah, Esther, I think that juxtaposition again between being the leader and listening to your second in commands or your second bananas, I think is a really interesting dance.
And
That, yeah, not always probably the easiest one. All right. You had a corporate career. Then you have grown your company. You said you got 30 people working for you. That is not insubstantial, unsubstantial. Okay.
it's been a ride.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So, what would you say? I think from our point of view, you are quite a successful business person. What would you say that you still wrestle with on the inside?
Oh, goodness. Actually, whenever I talk to people and I talk to young business people or young people in college and they say, what would I have done different? If I
Mm,
go back to my 20-year-old self, 22-year-old self, I would say take accounting. Every boring
mm.
accounting course you can, because I came back, my degree is in film. I have a degree in film and then two minors, one in physics and one in commercial arts. So I have a weird educational degree. And so as a result, I had learned a lot of liberal arts, but I hadn't really taken some of the more hard business courses. And I wish I had, because that's something that I still struggle with on a regular basis, is truly keeping the match on the money. I do have experts that I hire in to help me with that, and advisors, whether it's fractional experts or additional outside help, is really instrumental. But it is something that I spend time on. Just I wish I had learned more of the concepts at a younger age. Probably would have been better for my personal finances too, and as well as the business. Whenever I give any advice to people who are just thinking about starting a business, boy oh boy, do it online or do it somewhere where, but take as many courses as you can to really understand how business money works, because you'll
Yeah,
be stronger and able to weather the storms as a result.
right. I think that is critical, absolutely critical. When I'm coaching people, sometimes I think they spend too much time getting ready to get ready.
Yeah.
My thing always, listen, if you can't sell, you do not have a business. So you can set up everything. If you can't sell your services or don't start with a salesperson, you don't have a business. But I would also say that I would agree with you 100% that I think that the sort of next thing is business owners, they run their finances, their budgeting is how much money do I have in the bank?
Yep. Yep. And live from check to check. There's many stories from people that I know personally, and people that I've known through my networks, where not understanding that completely, it leads to bad decisions and bad decisions. And then one day you wake up and then you don't have a business, and you have to be able to make the hard choices
Right,
and make them, whether it's agonizing or not, and they are, just make them without apology, because you're
right.
trying to hold the rest of the business in a profitable state, mostly so that you can be good to your clients and good to your employees, and that in turn results in great relationships and great employee effectiveness.
And I think the other thing that occurs to me about what you say, which is maybe one of the hardest things, is once you know your numbers, the numbers are the numbers
Yeah.
and they are unemotional. Like you may have feelings around it, but
Mm,
the numbers are in the same way, right? Is the marketing numbers, right? Are like how many people open your emails
yeah.
is it is what it is, right? It's the same thing with the numbers that you can make choices about what you're willing to sustain and what
Yeah.
you're not. But the best advice is that you have to keep your emotions separate
You do. You
from what
do.
the finances are. Even though, like you said, it can lead to some very painful decisions.
And you have to make them without apology,
That's right.
and not be timid about it, because
Right.
being timid about it then doesn't come across as a position of strength. It comes across as a position of fear, and you don't want
Right.
fear in this business.
Yeah. And fear also doesn't grow a business.
No, it does not. Does not.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. All right. What if you could rewrite the rule book on
Yeah.
leadership? What's one outdated belief that you would throw away and what would you replace it with?
So the term that I hear invariably in smaller businesses, and to me, it's this four-word sentence, to me, is the four-letter word of business, and that is, we are a family. And this is why, okay? Families are messy, families fight, and there are great supportive organizations, which I'll get to that in a minute. But what happens is that in the idea of we are a family introduces an idea of sometimes toxicity of, oh, I'm going to ask of you more than I'm willing to pay you for. I'm going to ask you to do things that are not your remit. I'm going to ask you to do things that maybe are not entirely above board because we're a family. We're going to take care of each other. And it's the family becomes almost like the mob, right? And it's this gangster mentality. And also, like I said, it can be toxic that because of what can really be family dynamics. What I think it needs to be is, and I don't really love this term either, but I love the concept of it, and that is servant leadership. All right. You, as the business owner, you're there to, first of all, draw out the excellence in the people who have trusted their careers to you, and then also draw out the best in the clients who have trusted their work to you. And you have to, I worked for a phenomenal manager many years ago who always said that she worked for the team, this large team that reported to her. She's, I work for you. My job is to help you be amazing at your job. And I've tried to take that philosophy. And I tell my team all the time, we are not a family, right? You do work, I pay you, and you go home to your real family, right? I don't want this idea that your work family takes precedence over your home family. I tell everybody I want them to work a hard 40 hours or whatever, and managers a little bit more, but I want people to work those 40 hours a week. And then I want them to go home and be with their families and be with their communities and their churches and temples and government and all the things that make a life. And when you have the idea of family, it takes over everything, right? That sucks up all the energy in the room. So I summarily reject that, not because I don't believe in family, I do, but I believe in the family that you have at home, and that's the family that you need to give that attention to. Work is work. You're coming in, you're doing a service, and I'm paying you for it. Now, the enthusiasm that people apply to it and the passion and the commitment to excellence, that's great. But that comes out of the respect, which we talked about earlier. So that is my philosophy. And my job is to bring out the best in everybody. And that is by taking the mentality that I am working for them. I am privileged to have them say yes to work for me, from the first person who did to the last person who accepted a position. It is a privilege for me to have them on this team because of how great they are. And I have to keep on remembering that every day. When you flip the script
Mhm.
into a family model, I think that, like I said, it overtakes the things that ultimately are much more important at the end of the day.
I really haven't heard anybody make that distinction quite as clearly as you have. And I would agree with you 100%. It's interesting, back in the day, and we are talking back in the day, I was a camp counselor. And I will never forget the director saying to us in training, you are there to be friendly, not their friend. Right.
Mhm.
And it has stuck. And that was when I was a teenager. And it has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a difference, right? We do want to create inclusive cultures and caring cultures at work and
Right.
all of those things. But when we blur the line between work and, like you said, sort of family, it makes it really difficult also to do the kinds of things that you also need to do as a business owner, right?
Yes. Yeah. Families keep secrets. I don't need secrets. I need transparency.
And here's the other thing is that I'm actually dealing with a client right now where the lines feel very blurry to the business owner around allegiance, around taking care of. And this person is not performing to the level that they need to perform.
Yeah.
And there is nothing that is more expensive in your business than an underperforming employee who you
Hmm.
tolerate.
Right. And the one thing that's a hallmark of every single family, is there a family that has existed in the history of ever that did not have the line, don't tell mom and dad?
Uh,
Okay. And again, it's that dynamic. When you start calling yourself a family, you start introducing dynamics in there that are not necessary. And part of it is, don't want to tell the parental unit because they'll get mad. That's stupid. That's stupid. And that's the thing that I constantly try to battle against. And I'm very fortunate in that I've tried to institute that really from the get-go. And then also be clear, you're here to do a job. I'm not asking for your life. There are places now that now have it's the pendulum swings one way to another, and the idea that you give up your life, and great if you're truly committed to it. But if you're not truly committed to it and you're doing it because you're afraid, again, you can see the themes kind of knitting together.
And you know what it also reminds me of is that, and this was a number of years ago when Facebook was Facebook and not Meta, but I did some work for Facebook and I did it in person on the campus. And as a guest, like it is a city, like it is a small city in and of itself being on that campus, right? And your food is there and there's a dry cleaner. All the services that you need in your
Yeah,
life basically are there and they are quote unquote free. What is the payment for that? The
yeah,
payment for that is that your life is then there, right?
yeah.
Like they all seem like such perks, but the reality is that people work a gazillion hours. They're like, don't leave campus to go get food. Don't leave campus to go pick up your dry cleaning, right? Don't get these services out. Have your entire life here and then just work and work.
And there's going to be a penalty to that eventually. Working constantly without giving yourself a brain to time to rest, hence the blank slate day, without giving yourself some time to breathe and absorb, ultimately leads to mistakes or missed insight. You can
Yeah.
only caffeinate yourself. You can only have so many Red Bulls and Monsters and all the performance mushrooms
Right.
that you can shove into yourself. That only goes so far. What's amazing to me is that the newest generation, Gen Z, don't remember the go-go late 90s of the internet boom, right? Where Yahoo was getting started and all these startups were getting started and they were doing a startup every other week. I spent a lot of time in Mountain View and in San Ramon, California in those days, working for another company. So I was out there a lot and you could see people all day, all night, inventing Linux, inventing, and it was crazy. People were like sleeping on floors in empty offices to build websites and all of those things. And then the crash happened in 2000. Everything went bust. And these people who did all the work for stock options at the time, because that was the big thing. We don't
Yes,
have
it
any money,
was.
but we'll pay you in options. Those options went bust, and here these people gave 2, 3 years of their life and had nothing other than the story to tell. But you can't eat a story. You can't start a family on a story.
No. And Esther, just to go back to your comment about financial know-how, they owed taxes on all of that stock
They
that was
did.
worth
I knew
it.
people who were badly burned by that, badly burned
Yep.
by those options, and found themselves not only with no money, but also with a monumental tax bill. There was a lot of hard, bad decisions that were made.
Yeah.
And because of youth enthusiasm but the grinding wheel of industry does win in the end. The house always wins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, what a great analogy. Yes, it does. Yeah. Oh, my God. All right. So, what's one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow your business, even though it might be not typical?
So I have a kind of philosophy that I've applied in my business, and that is how we deal with good news and bad news. All right. I try as much as possible. Good news should be delivered by the person who has the closest touch with our clients. The bad news needs to come from me or a senior person. And I think that accomplishes two things. And it's always a temptation as the business owner, as the boss, to be like, look at what the team did, or look at what, or be the one to give the good news. It feels good. We like doing it because it feels good. But you know what? What does also feel good is having the person who is responsible for it, or the person who can really rightly have the credit for it, be the one that deliver the good news that something's done, something's achieved, something's accomplished, whenever possible. One, because it shows that you know how to hire smart people and elevate smart people and give credit to smart people. So it's not only a testament to their skills as an associate, but it also shows that you know how to pick good people, which is also important for longevity in your relationships with your clients. So that's the first thing. The second is that as you want your team to feel that they're validated and they get the credit that credit's due. Having worked in environments in the past where voice gets stolen because somebody decides that they want to be the one to deliver good news or take credit for the work that you've done, that's not a particularly motivating feeling. Okay.
No.
And so I think that it's important to take that. And then in terms of bad news, again, when you do it yourself as the leader, it doesn't matter whether it was completely 100% the fault of somebody who was working for you. You take responsibility. I think that is ultimately a mature look at client management and ownership, and also that you are the person who's empowered to make everything right. Your team needs to understand that they can trust you to back them. You're not going to throw them under the bus. I find that to be reprehensible and unnecessary. So it's just that discernment of looking at the right way to deliver news and to talk about the good things and also things that not that it's necessarily bad news or a mistake or an error. It's not even that. It's just that anything that means that you have to be responsible for it, you're the one that delivers it. Put the big person pants on and do it.
Okay. I'm putting my big girl pants
Yep.
on.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I do. And I was in a situation recently where somebody took credit for some of the suggestions that I made, and I was a little surprised. It did not necessarily feel good. And so it was interesting. And
But by the token, though, too, so there's a little bit of discernment with that too, because there's people who steal credit, and then there's people who your job is to, again, look, you kind of look at the second banana model, your job is to make them look good.
right,
And what I found too sometimes is when you help somebody look amazing and they look good, they keep you around. Okay. They keep you around and they know
mhm,
who is helping them be amazing. The people at your peer level also know. And sometimes that's enough. And
right,
sometimes I ask myself is, did the check clear? That's really the thanks that I get at the end of the day. As long as
right.
I'm getting paid for my knowledge and my skill and the things that I offer, you know what? You take that as the win.
And I think you make a good point, which is to have the maturity and the discernment and maybe a healthy enough ego that you can let that go and you
Yeah.
can frame it in the way that you're talking about, right? I think earlier in my life, I'm not sure that I ever would have been the person to say, oh, wait a second, that was my idea. I
Yeah.
think I always had enough sort of self preservation or self worth to not do that. But
Yeah.
I would be in earlier in my career, I would be so hurt.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I think now I went to the exact same place that you were talking about. I'm like, oh, okay. That was interesting. That must have been important, right? So I did make her look good, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. You're around and they keep on writing checks to you, and that's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
And ultimately, people know, and they do. There's for good people, if they're there behind the scenes, the competent people, the people who are really affecting change, they're known
Yeah.
and may not necessarily be with big blaring lights, but that's okay. It really is. So as long as you're not being, your voice isn't being stolen and your money's being stolen, then that's when you can get a little salty.
Okay. All right. And then again, you have to have the financial wherewithal and be watching your finances to know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Bring in all
See how it
kinds of
goes together?
tie-ins.
Yeah, yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's bring it home here. And I have one last question for you, and
Mhm.
it's a two-parter.
Okay.
If at this point you're going to feel some imposter syndrome, some self-doubt, where is that going to show up for you? Is part one. Part two is what do you do about it?
Yeah. So just a super brief story. So I didn't always look like this. I was a lot heavier for really most of my life. I was born heavy. That was my doctor smacked my tail when I was born and put me on a diet. And so I was heavy my whole life. And working in marketing and especially in some pretty aggressive industries, you walk into a room and you're 150 pounds heavier than I am now, and And people look you up and down and they start making instant judgment calls. And that you don't feel particularly awesome at that. And you ask yourself, do I belong here? Do I belong? Do I have a place here? And then I realized after a while, what I did was I would take the mindset that if someone was looking me up and down and they were looking at my shape and they were making a judgment call, that's when I knew I was going to beat them. That's when I knew. When they were putting their eyes on my body, I knew they were taking their eyes off the ball. And I had to go in with that mindset my whole career. I always did. And it's looking at you belong at the table. I work in a realm where the companies that I work with and partner with and compete with sometimes are much larger. And I have to respect that I got there. I didn't get there because I was stupid. I didn't get there because I was not functioning from an area of competence. And I've made it to that table. I do belong there, even though sometimes you say, I don't know, why am I here? But you know what? I have to say to myself that every day. I'm here, but I'm also here not because necessarily of me. I'm here because I have been blessed with having amazing people work for me. And it's those amazing people that have opened up the door that allows me to sit at that table as a leader and make things happen for them so that we all have jobs, we all have paychecks, and we all can go back to our families and live a life. So
Right.
that's it. But yep, I have to tell myself,
Yeah.
okay,
And I think that it's very interesting because I also had a weight loss journey and I lost 72 pounds, half of what you lost. But at some point, somebody said to me, don't you want to take down those other pictures of you now that you're thin? Exactly. I was like, no, because guess what? I am still the same person.
yeah,
I just lost weight. Like my mind didn't shrink or grow. And I do think this idea of judging people by how much they weigh and making judgments about their value at work or any in relationship, whatever, I think those are things that really need to be, I think, examined. And actually, I was not that I'm not advocating for Victoria's Secret, but they just had their fashion show. It just a lot of pictures showed up on my Instagram. And I will say that it was pretty cool. See that they were really inclusive
yeah.
around their models and so forth, and that all the models got equal billing like in the feed and lots of comments about like how beautiful they were and awesome. We still have a long way to go, I think, around body positivity and inclusion and acceptance, but I think from when you and I grew up, the pendulum at least is starting to swing in a way that I actually find quite surprising still.
Let's hope it stays swung. And the thing is that at this point, I'm extremely grateful because I've come from a point where I lost my husband 5 years ago. And it maybe if the people say, how did you do it? I say it's grief, grit, and GLP-1. I'm very transparent about it. So I just wish that those things had been around. Maybe 6 months might have made a huge difference, but you dance with the life that brought you. But it's never, for me, it was never an aesthetic. It was just, I really don't want to die young. That's really what it boils down to. It doesn't really matter what's in the mirror. It matters what's in here and what's in
That's
here.
right.
And that's at the end of the day. There's no drug for that.
Isn't that the truth? And then the last thing I'm going to say on this, because I've had a number of people say this to me, which is also just like crazy talk, in my opinion. So I know that we have gotten off the subject here, but I really think that it is important to say, which is that I lost my weight naturally. Okay. Whatever that means, I just did it. Okay. And I'd also been heavy my whole life. But here's the thing, just like you said, Esther, it doesn't really matter how you have lost it. If
Yeah.
your health is better, then
At the end of the day.
then you have won, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had a number of people come up to me and say, but you did it naturally. And I'm like,
I challenge that because the thing is that everything is not you, I'm not challenging you, but I'm challenging the people saying the quote unquote what is naturally and what is not. The fact that somebody has diabetes and they inject themselves with insulin so they can live. These are therapies that help people alive, blood pressure medicine, things for kidney function. We don't look with a side eye on any sort of therapy that helps people with any other chronic medical condition. I was angry at myself for decades because, of course, you're conditioned to believe, well, if you just had a little willpower, it's just built a multi-million-dollar company. I've gone through losing my parents, losing my husband. And don't tell me about what I have the willpower to do and not do. I went
Yeah.
to scholarships.
You're like, I got out of bed.
The willpower. I know I've come from very modest working class roots to get to where I'm at. So don't tell me about that. And it wasn't until you realize that you just feel better. And then you realize that it was just a chemical imbalance all along. And it's too bad that we spend a lot of cycles judging people on this. And it was unnecessary. And think of what we could have accomplished if we weren't in that cycle of judgment and self-hatred.
That's right.
So
And I would just say, and listeners, you can feel free to disagree with me. But I think the one other thing that I want to say is that everybody like it's your choice whether you decide that you want to take advantage of this and lose weight or not. And if you choose that that is not the path for you,
yeah.
then when you walk into a room, you should be judged on your contribution and your brain and all and your personality and all the
Yes.
other wonderful things about you. And what size you are is not really anybody else's business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? I was just as effective many pounds ago as I am now. I was a keynote speaker at IBM conferences at 300
Right.
pounds. To me, it's not a matter of the size thing. And a lot of it is just how you carry yourself and how you see yourself.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And congratulations on your journey. And I am sure that your health is improved by it and all the things. I guess what I'm saying is like you do you, right? And it's working for you and I'm excited for you and it's fun, right? It's a
You know
fun
what? You dance at the life that brung you, right? You do, you're faced with all sorts of things that happen over the course of your life. And everything is a decision, and then it's also living with the decision, not ruminating on the past or wishing that things were a different way. You don't have a choice. This is it. This is the life, and you either make the most of it, deal with the hand that you've been given, and make the most of it, and or curl up and wish for something. If wishes were fishes, we'd live in the sea.
I love that. That is a great note to end on. If wishes were fishes, we'd live in the sea. Ah, fabulous. All right, friends, you have been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom, where cliches come to retire and fresh thinking we inspire. I am Kim Miller-Hershon with my guest today, Esther Polson. Go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches come to retire. Drop that